Mark Kennedy, correct?
Yeah.
Mark Kennedy, 45 Scapes. You guys are Tiny Ontario.
That's correct.
And you're located Tiny Ontario, but that's not just what you service. You guys are all over up there, right? Up north throughout Barrie. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Mostly Simcoe County area.
Yeah.
Southern Georgian Bay. We service all those areas, as well as just outside, kind of the edge of Muskoka and so on as well.
And the core of your business is crazy outdoor living spaces, hardscapes. You guys throw some really cool shit in the ground, so it's cool to see. That's the gist of it, really?
Yeah, outdoor spaces is what we're big into. We love dealing with natural stone materials, and just really creating spaces for our clientele that they're going to enjoy for a long time.
Good. So how long ago did you start this off? And I really want to understand the story of how you got into it, how you got started. How many years ago was that? And I'm sure you had some other gig going on before this. What was that switch flipping? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a long journey, I guess. Even in high school as a teenager, we started out kind of, I say we, my brother and I, and my father, we started a lawn maintenance company. Cutting grass just for a few people, kind of keep us busy, make a little bit of money. My dad had his own full-time job that he was doing. So we did that for a while. And actually, I continued it a couple years after high school, which I enjoyed the work. Financially, it really wasn't paying off. I don't think I was working hard enough at it to really learn the business aspect of it. So I ended up leaving, not doing that. My brother had already been doing something else. So I kind of left that. I loved running equipment when I was, in my young 20s, we'll say. Loved running equipment. So I left that, went into residential equipment operating, basically. Lot grading, septic systems, basements, digging basements, backfilling, that kind of area. Grew out of that, went right into sewer and water, road building for a few years, and then landed in pipeline construction. So gas main work I'd worked for contractors that did work for TransCanada and Enbridge, putting in big mainline gas stuff. So anywhere from 30-inch pipe to 42-inch high-pressure pipe. So that was a journey. I loved it. We traveled all over the place in Canada installing this stuff. Worked as an operator as well as kind of field management as well at times. Excellent job. However, and probably one of the best paying jobs in the construction industry you can get. However, it consumes your life. Like a short week's 75 hours. And there's weeks that are, closer potentially to 100. You work 7 days a week. We start at I'd start 5:30 in the morning. A short day would be 6 o'clock at night. And then there were days that are longer. So, but you get paid for it. So it was fun. A
young man's game?
I think so. There's a lot of older guys that do it, definitely. But if you're a family person, it's hard. You're gone all the time, right? So, and that's what happened is ended up having, starting a family. And that's why I kind of
so
away from that.
That was really what drove that, correct?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. That I stepped away from that.
So kind of contradicting in itself, though, no? Like starting a business is like work 24/7, right?
Yeah, people tell me you're crazy to start with young kids, and I did come back, had just an operating job again. In the local area.
So you're doing like a bit of both, starting a business and then still operating?
No,
or?
just working for someone else for about a year and a half or so. Got bored of it. It was just like slow pace. It didn't take a lot of my mental focus, we'll say, to do that. So I ended up leaving that and diving into a business with, at that time, 2 kids at that point. And some people are probably like, that's not a good financial decision. And the first year was tough. But I love every minute of it.
So what was that like? So what year was that?
So fall of 2020, I kind of...
Is when you knew you wanted to do it?
I knew before that, but I didn't actually jump into it till a project almost landed in my lap. A friend was a general contractor.
Yeah.
And they had this landscaping job someone wanted to get done. And I believe at that time, it was COVID. A lot of people had a hard time getting contractors. And it was a decent sized job. And I kind of pitched them an idea of what the space would look like.
Yeah.
We didn't have any design software at the time. I didn't really have much of a business. And they agreed to it. And I couldn't believe it. We didn't, we came in, we got the job done for them, and it looked great. And that kind of flipped the switch. I'm like, yeah, all in at this point. But that was fall 2020.
So going in the slow season.
Yeah, going into the slow season. So we finished the project, and then I got a job as an operator for one of the subcontractors for Hydro One. So I actually got a job all winter.
Yeah.
Building like these off-road areas, building a road for Hydro One. So I built that road kind of all winter doing that. But as I was doing that, they only work like 4 days a week, barely 40 hours a week doing it. So it's kind of slow paced. So I had a lot of extra time on my hands to start the back end of the business, website and getting all our financials in order and lining up jobs for the spring.
When I would say, we were talking numbers a few months ago, and I don't remember exactly, but it sounded like you guys took off running like right away. The first season I remember was fairly...
Yeah, I mean, so I think our first season, there was 2 of us working. We did just under, I think it was 370,000.
Yeah.
Which was good, but our budget was slightly off. I thought we'd potentially do a little bit more, which made our cash flow kind of hard to manage that year. But yeah, since then we've kind of continued to grow and things have worked out well.
And I see all the time, or not all the time, but a lot of guys, they get excited, they jump right into it, but they don't have all their ducks in a row, the back end, like getting their software, whether it's Element or whatever, or getting their scheduling, their guys on board, their equipment, their budgets. They just jump right into it. Do you feel that had any turn? Like, sure, the first year you're doing 300,000, but you're only on this is year 5, right?
No, it's only going into year 4. We've done 3 full seasons.
3 full seasons.
Yeah.
So,
so we actually, I'd heard of Element, so that's what we used, and I used it right from day one, like before we even had revenue. Other than that fall project, other than that revenue, we had no revenue, and I jumped in paying for it initially, which was, I guess, kind of tough, but at the same time, it helps you understand your budget, your overhead, and what you actually need to charge to recoup all those things and be financially profitable.
It's mindless too when you're building out whatever your quotes, your jobs. It's like, as long as your budget's dialed in, you just have to input numbers.
Exactly.
And you can just pump out quotes without even thinking. And so why Element though? Like, there's so many out there, and you don't really know until you're all into it. And then the invested time, like, it's a lot of time to learn it. And it's, how was that decision? What?
I believe at the time they had a podcast, and just through listening to that, other people using it, different companies that had actually grown, decently large companies were using it.
Yeah.
So I seen it as an easy way, maybe not easy way, but the right way to scale our business or help do that. So over time, like at the beginning, yes, it was overkill for us, but I was looking into the future and really trying to, you're right, there's so much time invested in setting it up that I didn't want to be like resetting up things over and over and over again as we grew. I really seen it growing with us and helping us grow.
Well, and it's one thing doing it the off season, but doing that in the middle of the spring rush, onboarding into Element, I couldn't even imagine. And we've just done it a few months ago, and this spring it's been, or it's not spring, I guess.
It feels like it.
I know, but it's been game changing just planning out this whole year. So I actually do have a question for you. It's kind of off topic, but when your guys, like your crews aren't always together, I'd assume. If one guy does a material run, then clocks out earlier or whatever, how do your foremen clock out individual guys as opposed to just this whole crew?
So we use element time for that. And in there, you can pick an individual person. Like, let's say a guy has a dentist appointment, doctor's appointment, and he needs to show up a couple hours late that day. Same thing. They'll clock in the whole crew, but maybe hold that person off. There's a way to tab them in and out.
Yeah.
And, that guy started at 10 that day, and it's all there when you run your reports for payroll.
Right.
Makes it super easy to do your payroll, I find, anyways.
Yeah, good. So you guys have, like, your Instagram page is pretty cool, and the equipment, you got the Encon, your all of your equipment. It's super cool what you guys have done, but you can have all this equipment, these trucks, these skid steers, excavators, but if you don't have the systems, the processes, and the team in place, you're nothing without all of that. What can you speak on? What really stood out your first year, your second year, on what made you get to the next level there?
I mean, at the end of the day, it is all about people, and it's hard to get the right people in there and the equipment. So the first year, we didn't know exactly what we needed based on what job, so we rented pretty much everything. We bought a tool trailer because I seen that as a good investment to always have our tools in one spot, and not be running around for this and that. We forgot that tool, forgot this tool. It's all there, all of our tools. We bring it on site, leave it there. So that was kind of year one. And my brother actually has been with me since day one, and he is now my main foreman on site that we have. And yeah, we've gone through people as time goes on, but we have a great crew now. The equipment side of things, people probably will think I'm crazy too. Year two.
Is that when you got?
So we only had year one. It was like the pickup truck, the equipment trailer. We bought like a packer, a lot of all the small tools. We've continued to grow the small tools as we go that you need for landscaping or hardscaping. Yeah. But the big stuff, the assets, it was kind of year two. We bought a John Deere 60G with an Encon on it.
You bought it right away with the Encon?
Yeah, we ordered it right away. That was a bad time to buy equipment too. So I think it took about 9 months to come in. So we actually ordered it the year before.
So the first year you ordered it?
Correct. The first year we ordered it, and we had to, in the fall, I think it was like October, ordered it then, put a down payment on it. It didn't come till June. So that next year we were still renting for a little while.
Yeah.
It showed up, and I just seen people with them, and I seen the value in labor is hard to find, and skilled people. And that just saves so much. Yeah, the efficiency is huge. I come from that operating background, so I seen efficiency on a large scale of companies a lot. And I seen how that could help us with our line of work. So that was the first thing we bought as we didn't buy mini skid. Our area, for the most part, we don't work in that tight of backyards. And we do retaining walls and so on. So we needed something that could actually lift a decent amount of weight, being that 6-ton machine. So we bought that. We rented a skid steer that year for most of the year. And that's when...
And like a long-term rental?
Yeah, long-term, like months at a time. Yeah. So because the monthly rate is so much better than like a day rate here and there. So we just rent them for a big chunk of time, trying to line up the jobs that were going to need that machine at that time, so we could just move it. Like we had a float at that time. Once we had our excavator, we bought a float as well, so we could move it around. So then we can move the rental skid steer too. So we could just, we're done that job. It goes on. We move it to the next one, and we kept going. But we rented it for multiple months that year, and I knew come that winter, it was kind of time. Yeah, you look at the dollar of what we're spending in rental, it was drastically less than owning.
Yeah.
That's when we kind of hopped into a skid steer as well as a small dump truck the following year.
And that was in, what was that?
That was spring of 23. So and that small dump truck is actually one of the greatest efficiencies, I think. Lots of times we don't have hired on dump trucks, but when you're talking about small cleanups and things and just finishing the job, having that larger dump truck sit there on an hourly clock can start to add up. And other times you wouldn't want to bring it in because it didn't seem worth it. So just having that small dump truck all the time on site is so...
Just bridges the gap between getting a triaxle.
Yeah, for sure. And all of our stone delivery typically comes by triaxle because a lot of our projects need multiple loads. Like I think the last one we finished before Christmas probably had like 4 triaxle loads of aggregate come in.
Wow.
To get the base done and backfill and so on that we needed to accomplish.
So you're so forward-thinking. It's impressive with the LMN investing time in that, and then investing time in NCon and seeing the efficiencies, not only the money, but the time. I'm sure you had no issue running it, but your guys too. You're not sitting in an excavator all day as an owner, right? Like your guys learning, but you being able to see like, okay, listen, it might take 40, 80, 100 hours to get the hang of it. But after that, we're going to make up for that time. So that's impressive. And one thing I want you to touch on, the first year, sure, was COVID and everyone was wanting stuff done, but how were you able to market yourself, brand yourself those first years? What really stood out and worked?
That's still work in progress for sure. Just immediately getting a good website built. Actually, I think the first year I built it myself, we didn't have capital to hire someone. So we made it the best we could. From there, we had a Google page as well, putting pictures on there, the Instagram.
And the phone just started ringing?
It did. Oh, sorry. We did Google Ads the first year.
Yeah.
We didn't do any Facebook. But we did Google, and that's what got our jobs. Actually, I think the first year we had, I'm pretty sure 0 referral, maybe 1 referral job. It was all from Google Ads.
Really?
Yeah. And there was a lot of people, either tire kickers or people that didn't want to spend the money with us, because I think we weren't the most expensive by any means in our area, but we definitely weren't the cheapest with the quality of work we do, the materials we were putting in, and knowing our costs right away from day one, knowing our overhead, knowing we wanted to make a profit, obviously. So it didn't allow us to be the cheapest, but it allowed us to do a high quality of work. And once we did land the job, our clients never had a bad thing to say about us. They were always thrilled, and we did start to get kind of a referral thing going from our previous clientele.
And I'm sure once you built the portfolio too, like it's hard at first, you don't have anything to show with your name on it, but once you get the ball rolling, it just keeps going.
For sure. And actually, I was fortunate enough that right from day one, back when we had the maintenance company, when I was in high school, we did have some hardscaping back then. And when I was, just outside of high school. So I had photos that I could use that were technically mine, right? We built the projects and so on. So I was fortunate that I did have some work to show, but the problem was it was work that was 10 years old. One of the benefits we had was going back 10 years later, our projects we went back and took pictures then.
Oh yeah.
And they still look good. Like there was no dips in our patios or anything like that for sure. So we even took pride in our work back then, doing a high quality work.
And being a new company, that's the thing. That's somewhat is what appealing is. They don't know their numbers. They probably are cheaper, and it's not going to be the quality, but I'm sure that's what you got a lot of when people were reaching out to you, and that's impressive that you're able to be dialed in from the first season and onwards. So setting up that budget, how were you able to like forecasts. You have no clue. You have no seasons to work off of. Like setting your profit margins, like sure you could be like, sure I want to make 30%, but how the hell am I going to sell all this? But like how do you know?
So you don't. I don't think. We didn't anyways. And I just based it off of what I thought we could do and sell. And so the revenue, truthfully, we got wrong.
Yeah.
I overestimated revenue, which made it hard. And we didn't, the first year, recoup all of our overhead. So yeah, made the cash flow a little tough that first year. So we came in under budget or budgeted revenue. The following year, I readjusted and we ended up able to do, I think, 120,000 over budget, budgeted revenue. So then the next year, our cash flow just started rolling a lot better. It was a lot easier to maintain the company as we went. And I think having the equipment, owning it, made us so much more efficient. When we were renting, you're always wanting to like get it back in the shortest time you think you could.
Yeah.
But then when you get at one point, you're like, oh, I wish I had this. And then you're shoveling or something like that. Whereas it's like, if you had the machine still just sitting there on site,
you would have just,
you can scoop it up and you would have saved, 4 hours of time for this little thing.
Yeah.
So our efficiency went way up the next year with that.
So profit margins, what numbers were you looking at the first year, knowing it's your first year?
The first year we were aiming, we budgeted for 10%.
Yeah.
Obviously we didn't make that because mostly of our revenue, we were still pretty good on man hours. I was really good at estimating time of jobs, length, what it would take to do the job. So those things all went fairly well. Materials went fairly well. It was just, we didn't, again, back to that overall revenue, we didn't hit.
Interesting. So man hours and estimates, we're owner operators now. We're in tuned now. We can look at something and know exactly what it's going to be, but not down the road. And if this is a scalable model, that wherever the vision is to take it, something on a larger scale, whether it's an office lady or an estimator, how have you slowly started, or have you putting systems in place to, I guess, systematize that process, putting metrics on like this retaining wall or ripping out? I don't know. That's what I struggle with. How do you put a metric on ripping out something? It's different every single time. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
When it comes to the building aspect of it, anyways, we typically know, how much base we need per 100 square feet. I have all those like production rates. So I can easily go, this patio is 1,000 square feet. We need this many tons of 3/4 clear aggregate.
Yeah.
And then time frame, again, something I need to work on is getting production rates for this patio is going to take approximately this long, but all that currently is in my head. I need to put it down into the system so that, yes, you're right. As you grow, someone else can estimate fairly easily. I do think that's still hard though, because everything we do, especially, it's not just a 10 by 20 patio. Like that never happens for us. That's not our clientele, and that's not what we're getting asked to do. Typically, it's always something more obscure, we'll say, and people are having trouble with it, getting the right contractor to get what they want completed. And whether that's like building larger engineered retaining walls, and some contractors, they don't want to go down the path of permits and planning and engineering and so on to get all those things lined up where we'll look after it for everybody. I'm trying to get that written down and set up into the system so people can go in the future and just, click, click, click. But I do find it's a little hard because some things are so obscure.
Yeah. So like, what's the first step into that? Whether like it could be like their front yard, their backyard, or a different size paver, or weird access, or it's close to the lake, or like there's so many.
You're right.
Like
so many variables.
You just make production rates for every single variable, have 100 variables, or like what? It's I don't even know where to start with it.
To a degree, but I think it also comes down to training. Having that staff that's going to be doing it, probably doing it with me and also working with our foreman at the beginning, especially, and being like, maybe there's some production rates in there, and then just asking quickly, whether it's a foreman or a operations manager, like, hey, what do you think about this time frame for this backyard patio, this backyard retaining wall, or, bad access in our area? We have some decent sized slopes and hills from cottages down to the water, and like things like that. They add a lot of time working on those slopes and hills, and bringing all that topsoil and things out that you're excavating, and then bringing in the aggregate. These things can add a lot of time, opposed to dumping a triaxle right beside the patio and just throwing the aggregate in.
Or instead of the backyard, doing it at the front yard. And I'm sure once, like, whatever, it's an estimator or office lady starts to do that, they see like, okay, this is what your successful estimate was for the back. We're doing the same thing in the front, so maybe take a few hours off. I don't know. You're right. Training is...
Yeah, training. I think also something we don't do, which I'd like to get more into, is job costing. So we track all our time, and I can easily look at a job and say, yeah, we hit hours. Perfect. We can go back and look at those hours right now.
Yep.
But maybe even more so job costing and materials. Like, far as if you're doing a rectangular patio with pavers, you don't have much waste. But if you're doing a 5-point custom cut granite flagstone patio, I mean, your waste is huge.
Yeah.
Like, you're cutting every single piece, every single side. So, you can lose 20-25% of your square footage easily by cutting it all up and getting it to fit together nicely.
So putting that within the job costing.
Yeah, for sure. As well as, maybe the production rates, making sure those items are in there as well. You need a lot more waste for this material than this one. Or if you're doing, big curves or an inlay or, and you're right. It's almost endless. So really, I think training will help that, making really sure they understand what they're bidding off of a certain design.
So many variables.
Yes.
So how do you structure things with your team? Like, what does your day-to-day look like? You have your right-hand man, your foreman, your brother, and then a solid crew, it sounds like. How do you structure like the estimates, the back end, the client relations? Like, how does that go?
It varies day to day, I'll say, but I do still work on site. Probably as of the fall, I was probably working on site 60% of the time, approximately. Yeah. So I typically like to go out in the morning to site, potentially work that morning, or depending on the day. If we're really, running multiple machines, and I'll hop in a machine and do something in one of the machines, get that aspect of a project done, and maybe work all that day.
Yeah. And
then schedule meetings for another day, as well as some of that office work, whether it's invoicing, estimating. Typically, invoicing is a pretty quick thing inside the program we use. It's already built out after you've given the estimate. So you're just like clicking, sending it. That takes almost none of my time up. But the estimates do. They can take, still having all the line items that you need inside of a patio, for instance. It still takes time going through and making sure you have all the right inputs there. But yes, I'd say, 60% of my time's in the field still. And then the 40% is estimates, meetings with clientele. I still do all of our 3D renderings, which that is something this year I'm looking to either sub out or hire on.
Bring in-house.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be awesome? I know it's so hard to keep them busy all the time, but having someone who can do that, but also some admin, like having that all in under one salary.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a hard person to find. And even if it's not a lot of admin work, but if they're designing it, they really know all the materials going in, potentially having them do the estimates.
Interesting. And what do you use? Like something like UVision or?
Yes. So we use Real Architect Landscape, which is basically UVision's white label. So it's just the one directly I believe it's real-time architect, landscape architect.
I think
I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And it works really good. It's fairly easy to use for the most part. It takes a little bit, especially with elevations. It can get a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
And we do charge for our designs because it takes work.
Yeah.
So we charge for our designs up front. I think our first year we didn't.
Just to
try and get jobs. And it did work, and then it didn't work. So I never give them the design, so they couldn't keep it, but I'd show it to them in front of them.
Because then it starts getting past.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when it was free. So now back then, we would, I'd show it to them, and we'd go over it, and we were starting a couple jobs from it, and then a couple people passed, and I started to see the wasted time that was going into it. So that first year, actually, we flipped and started charging mid-season for designs. And actually, once we did that, it's worked out great. We were even selling designs that first year. Not a lot, but we were still charging for it. So our clients seen the value in it, and continually we've scaled the price a little bit.
Like roughly, what are you at? Like
now we're at, it depends. Like, if someone just wants a front yard, it's less, but we're anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 for a design, depending on the scope of the work.
Yeah. Good. I know the UPLP group up in Orangeville, they charge just for estimates, just for coming to site. They screen them out. It's $250 just for them to show up. But at that point, if someone's paying $250 just for you to come, they're already fairly sold, opposed to just getting a bunch of estimates and humming and hawing and seeing, like, what do you think that could be something that's usable or potential? Do you find that?
I see value in it. I think it's hard to sell to some people. I think you can lose work, but depending on your company, it probably definitely makes sense. Like I see so many tire kickers, and that would definitely eliminate that. So I see the value in it.
But at the same time, turning your back to
possibly some other ones. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's clientele I always think, I'm like, after the first initial meeting, I'm like, there's no way they're going with us. And then, they sign on the dotted line. They're like, we'd love to go forward with you. And they've been some of the best clients we've ever had. So it's very hard, I find, to read people. Back to the charging for consultations, though. Yeah, I think it's almost like a mindset as a contractor. I think you could do it.
What, complimentary?
No, you could charge.
Yeah.
But it's like getting over the fact that you might lose out on some.
But I feel it's almost the same. Like if you get a free university course, you're not going to do as well as if you pay for it yourself, if your parents pay it or whatever.
Right.
Because you're in it. The same thing with a client. It's like they're so much more committed to actually like understanding it, opposed to just like, give me 10 of these and I might pick one, maybe in 3 years. Like,
for sure.
I think it's all a balance. So what are a few of your like the biggest pain points and things you're working on? I know it's never ending, for me at least, but what's the next steps and things you're working on?
So I think still is a big one for us is branding, marketing, like sales. So getting out more front of more people and showing our brand prior to them actually working with us, showing the value in 45 Scapes. It is a huge thing, trying to get that across. So I think that's a big step for us. So they can see the value in us before they hire us. All of our clients see the value once they've hired us. They're like, you were on schedule. You started when you said you were going to. You told us it was going to be a 3-week project. It was a 3-week project. I mean, like, all those things have huge value to our clients, and the quality of work obviously is there. But everybody says their quality of work is there. But those management things and client relations go a long way with us, I think.
So what's the first step towards that? How?
So actually, we've just signed up with a consultant, a larger landscape contractor that's been around for 30 plus years, has a consulting firm, and we've just decided to go forward with them.
Who's that?
That is KTC Knowledge Tree Consulting.
Okay.
George over there. So we're going to go forward with him and try and learn a lot.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a big step for us.
And well, I'm sure that's not only the marketing and
Oh,
branding.
that's everything. Like we'll do operations and the whole thing.
So one thing I've struggled with is like formatting your crew. Of like, sure, you can have a foreman and 2 laborers, or a foreman, a driver, and 2 laborers, but then for us, 4 guys on site is way too much when the driver's done because our sites are super small. But at the same time, if you have only 3 guys, a foreman, 2 laborers, the foreman ends up driving, but then nothing getting done on site. How have you guys, I guess, this is going back to a question before, but like structured your crew? Like you have your right hand, like your brother's awesome, it sounds like. And having an all-star crew, all 5 guys or 4 guys is very, very hard. And guys, giving them $100,000 truck to just go do a dump run you can't give that to everyone.
No,
how
sure.
How do you structure that?
So my foreman, he drives our company truck every day. So it's on site, and it basically does no running around, which I've had other people be like, oh, you don't go get that 22 ton with that truck? No, because 1, he has to be gone, and he spent all day getting like 4 loads, right? So it stays on site. It's for like cleaning up, or maybe we need to bring some topsoil to site to finish up a job. Well, he'll grab it in the morning. The pits or wherever we're getting our material, they're open early. Get there, grab a load, drives there to site. So he operates the truck. And then he runs the crew, kind of like what's going on site. And he's there all day. He's not leaving. He maybe gets tied up 15 minutes late, and maybe we schedule that I'm there that morning early with
just to get everyone going.
Yeah, just get everybody going, and I'll step in and work too. I kind of work on the tools a bit, and mostly just the equipment. I don't cut too much or anything like that anymore. Because I have skilled people that are great. We have an operator that runs the excavator and Encon, as well as our skid steer. Actually, all the guys run the skid steer. They work well in it, especially when we're bucketing material, and that's what skid steer on a landscape job does most of the time until we're cleaning up. But our operator, I'd say he's a technician as well. Like he's amazing at cutting flagstone, like huge pieces straight, lining it up, looks good. But so is Matt, my brother, and even our last technician. He can run the skid steer when needed, but he's installing. We almost have no laborers. I say all of our crew is skilled,
but they just have their or whatever.
And there is some shoveling that goes on, but when we have all these tools, there's no backbreaking. Almost like never do we have backbreaking work. The odd time we might have to use a wheelbarrow for an hour here and there, but we really avoid that and have these skilled guys installing the product is kind of how I structure it, and it's worked really well. They know what they're doing. They know what the next steps are when we're putting in. Nobody's standing around ever. They can see what's next, whether that's, we've gotten so far with the patio, we need to screed HPB. Somebody's already grabbing the rails, getting it put out. There's very little managing, we'll say, and pointing. So it really keeps everybody so efficient.
But that didn't happen right away.
No.
It takes a lot of time.
It does.
So when it's like taking fill out or bringing aggregate in or even material in, you like to have suppliers or outsource that as much as you can because of how valuable your guys 100%. Are producing.
Yeah, nobody's basically running around during the day to get anything. We might, at the end of the day, have the truck full of garbage, for instance.
Yeah.
But it'll sit in the truck till the end of the day, and then we go deal with it. And maybe that's leaving half an hour earlier that day. Maybe not. Maybe they just get paid longer that day. And we get rid of it then. But yes, everything, our pavers, our aggregate, if we're getting sod delivered, a large amount of topsoil, I mean, everything. If we're hauling away, and again, most of our jobs are larger. I shouldn't say too large, but they're a decent sized project.
Yeah.
You know, we're hiring triaxles all the time to take fill out, take stumps and brush away.
Yeah.
We do a lot of sub work with arborists and so on. So if there's trees and so on that need to be chipped, they deal with it. They get rid of that for us. So our guys are back to installing.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So the whole pool thing I want to touch on.
Sure.
I've heard multiple things, fiberglass pools, throwing shells in the ground, and especially our climate. You really have to be dialed in with what you're doing. It sounds like I'm not a professional, but for shells especially, there's definitely risk involved in comparison to other ways of throwing a pool in the ground. I want you to elaborate, number one, on that, but also tell us a bit about what you guys are planning to do and plans moving forward for that.
All right. Yeah, so we see a huge value in installing pools ourselves. One, we work around them quite often. And when we do, some contractors, especially if it's the homeowner that's gone and hired a pool company, put the pool in, and that's it. And then we come in and landscape behind it.
Like the coping it out?
Yeah, sometimes they don't even put the coping in. We've done the coping for that pool company, but it's like for the homeowner.
Yeah.
So they literally just throw the pool in the ground. And when that happens, they want to get it done fast. So they dig the pool and they're gone. But then they didn't strip any topsoil or organic material away from the pool. So then we're having to go in slowly and try and get all this material away from the pool. We don't know where their pool lines are now. And it's a huge headache, really. At the end of the day, it makes us slow and takes the job way longer. It costs more for the client because we have to account for that time. So we're looking to install pools in the future, and I see benefit in a high quality fiberglass pool. So currently we're looking into different manufacturers that can produce a high quality pool. There are some there with a great education. We've done manufacturer site visits of their facility to see how their pools are built.
Yeah.
And the way they not only, some manufacturers will make pools with different fiberglass in them, some that certain areas that makes the pool stronger where it needs to be rigid, and other places where it can flex and not crack the gel coat. And different ways of installing them for our climate can go a long way. So for instance, digging out your base, putting in a clear stone base underneath that makes the water free draining, compacting it to set the pool on is huge. But then having a sump just beside the pool to monitor your groundwater level is probably the biggest thing you can do in our climate with freeze thaw, and preventing that pool from pushing up if you had too much groundwater. So the homeowner can easily lift off a skimmer lid and put a pump in to monitor that groundwater to make sure it doesn't get too high. So then you can just pump it out and make sure that things stay in good shape. A couple other ones we've seen, pretty sure it is a patent product from one of the pool manufacturers, is they actually fiberglass basically geogrid to the sides of their pools. So it prevents that bowing in and out. Yeah. So as you backfill, you can roll out. Basically geogrid. And there's same idea as a retaining wall, different heights throughout to keep that from pushing in on the walls. And so we see a huge value in that company. We think that would work excellent.
And you find it's just a missed opportunity at this point with other companies coming in and then you just coming in after? Is that really the driving factor so you can be do everything?
Yeah, so we definitely miss out on projects too. So there's other pool companies that either they have a landscaper, hardscaper to do their pool surround, or they do it themselves. And lots of times the homeowner's always calling for the pool first. Who's going to do that? And we could potentially, even if They do a great job. They strip all the topsoil away and everything's nice. We know where the lines are. We're missing out on the work around the pool. So if we can sell the pool as well, I think there's lots of added value for our clients there.
And then, so back to the branding thing you were mentioning, that's changing a little bit of your brand to get it out there. What are the first steps going into that? Because that's, now you guys are pool installers, and if you've done the training, you've invested the time, your guys now know how to do this, the work's not coming in, then it's like, we might as well have just been better off doing what we're good at and sticking to our niches. Like Dad's talk about that all the time. Make sure you know what you're good at and just do that the whole time.
For sure.
There's the risk at that factor. How are you going to guarantee that? Like, what are you going to do to make sure it's
the leads are coming in? Yeah. We'll definitely do all the training with our staff, so everybody knows how to, like you said, install. Potentially, we're rebranding and building maybe even potentially a microsite off of our site. To then just, this is our pool section. They click on that, or we advertise that microsite to really see how our traffic works and so on. And whether maybe that is potentially rebranding down the road and actually just having a pool company. And then we would own both.
And just keeping it separate?
Yeah, keeping them separate. Totally, yeah. And saying, but when we get in front of the client, we're still, it's still all one thing, right, for them.
Yeah.
They're not going to rehire, let's say, 45 Scapes to do this, but this company to do their pool. It'll be owned by the same company essentially, but maybe rebranding it as a pool company separate.
So next steps, what's next 3-5 years? Where are you guys going? You guys, it seems like you guys have things down pat. The quality of work is amazing. You guys have one crew that's super dialed in now. What's the vision? What's next? Is it focused on quality, growing, scaling? Where's your head at?
I think systems, really dial it in a little bit more. Get the office, let's say, dialed in. Maybe not outsourcing some of the office work, but potentially hiring on staff to free my time up quite a bit there.
Right.
So then I can then look further at growing and scaling, since we do have the people in place. And I think, with time, the people we currently have placed, bringing on more to separate into two crews as the work comes in.
So separating two crews, you mentioned every single one of your guys, they know what they're doing. They're super, super skilled. That's very hard to find, having each guy know exactly what to do. How, what's your plan scaling that, starting two crews? Would it be have your two leaders of that crew that are super skilled? They know the culture, they know how you run, and instill that in so-called laborers, or what's?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, is if they want that. Obviously, we'd have that discussion. Like, are you looking to turn more into like a field management situation?
Yeah.
And then if that is what they want, then definitely I want to empower them so they can grow, and potentially, as you grow, giving them a greater salary and so on with those responsibilities. That's the goal. Because if we grow the company, it gives our staff more opportunity to grow with it. Whereas if you stay the way we are, they don't get to grow, and then potentially losing them, right?
Right.
And I don't want to see that. So I'd like to keep people, and so they have a career with us. It's not just a job for a couple of years. I want them to have a career.
I love that. Again.
Yeah. So that's where my head's at, and really. And then if it's, if there are certain people that don't really want that,
the responsibility and obligation.
Yeah, exactly. And then maybe it's bringing someone in that has the management skill, but probably not throwing them into that full lead right away. Bring them in, let them see the systems and so on, and get some training under the belt, right, how 45 does things, and then giving them that position in the future.
So talk about culture, the importance of that, because having a great culture, these guys are spending way more time with 45 than they are with their family. They're there all week, and waking up in the morning, having an environment to go to is so, so important. The guys need it. enjoy it and not hate their lives all day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you can create a great environment by shooting the shit until noon.
Not getting anything done.
Yeah. So what's, I guess, balance? Like, how do you go about that in the organization?
Yeah, I think it's a big thing's respecting them and bringing their opinions, whether it's, asking them how they go about doing this particular aspect of the job and valuing their thoughts into a project. And we do different things, whether that's, we try to show that we do value them, and that's, buying them lunch, sometimes even just like things like bringing them coffee, donuts, whatever. I think some of those little things go a long way. And a big one to me is when things go wrong, chances are I didn't communicate something properly, or, it probably falls back on me, and maybe it's training or something down the line, and not freaking out. Like, I've worked places in the past where these people freak out, they're yelling, they're throwing things. You see guys throw their hard hats, whatever it is. And it's really being calm, coming up with a solution right away, and maybe then doing some training and saying, this is why this went wrong with the team. But always just, calm, level head, because I think that is part of that culture, because it rubs off on them as well. And then when something goes wrong on their end,
they take the accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not freaking out. If they see everybody else is calm, hopefully they're calm, and you just think through the problems. But yeah, it's, whether it's, we'll try and do even more company events this year, and going out maybe partway through the season and taking them out to do stuff, and whatever that is, whether that's golfing, fishing, go-kart, I don't know, whatever, we'll come up with something, maybe a sports event, and just, showing that there's value there. And that, I think, creates a good company culture.
And the culture of continuously getting better too. Like, if you're the only one thinking of like, how can we better do this? Or why did this fuck up happen? Why was this guy not trained properly? Or why, like, stuff's happening constantly. But if you don't get to the bottom of it and be like, next time we're going to change this, opposed to this happened, let's move on, let's turn our back to it. Yeah. And then it happens again next week. So if the guys are thinking that, because you're not on site all the time, to see all these little micro things and having that environment of like, okay, this is why this happened, we're going to change this, and continuously getting better to perfect the craft, right?
Yes.
In terms of waste, like the Mark Bradley workshop or whatnot, they spoke on that, and I've been thinking about that the past few months, of how much waste, whether it's you seem to have the system down pat, but us forgetting a gas can or a shovel, or just how much things add up so quickly of the running around. And your solution seems to be, you're not hired to run around. That's not your job at all. You throw a quality product in the ground, and the running around is up to someone else.
Yeah.
And you think that's the biggest to your success of eliminating the waste, the running around?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we, again, like even fuel, that's always done at the end of the day, typically on the way back from the job site. So it's there, ready. A big waste thing. Yeah, always having all your tools and material on site. So getting those materials delivered, you got to think a few days ahead or more, even, weeks ahead, depending. So we always, as soon as we sell a job, we order those materials, like the hard skate materials, and we have good relationships with our dealer.
The delivery?
Correct. So it could be, I know last year we could have been like 4 months out or so on a project. So we'd order the materials, a good relationship with our dealers. We have a yard. It's not huge. So they will hold the material in their yard, have it there, gets marked off. And then I'll typically, a week out or so, call them. They're delivering it to us. So we have it on site. We're not waiting around. Delivering those aggregates is huge. It kind of And even in our yard, we try not to bring back materials that we're not going to use again, especially like there's so many paver choices, let's say, out there. The odds of us using it again are so slim.
We're so bad with that. We have all this random shit and there's only one or two pieces, or just like it's.
So having like, let's say you have 3 layers on a pallet of this obscure thing, the odds of us using it again, and like then manhandling it at the yard, unloading it, reloading it potentially again, we typically throw it out. And not that it's garbage, like it goes to a concrete pile, it gets crushed and gets reused for aggregate product.
Right.
So it's not like we're just like whipping stuff in the landfill. We try to be as environmentally friendly in that aspect as we can. But I think those things come down to waste too. Like it's not just on the job site, it's like in your yard and so on. And now we have another thing we do for wasted time is things we know we're going to use a lot through the year. We order by the pallet. So we use concrete edging for our edge restraints of our patios. We'll buy it by the skid. Not only do we always have it on hand, you typically with your supplier can get a 10%, maybe 15% discount buying it in that bulk form. So you're going to save money. We buy all our resin sand, our jointing compound, by the pallet. Like a pallet of resin sand is fairly expensive, but again, you save that 10% or so on that and you have it on hand. You're not running to a dealer to pick up a pail or two of that sand. You have it in your yard that they can grab in the morning.
So talk about the yard. I want you to touch on like meeting in the morning, or do the guys just go to site? Because that's waste as well. If guys are, they drive to the yard, they shoot the shit 10 minutes, and then they finally decide to get in the truck and then drive over. Like how do you, or is it just your foreman straight to site and everyone else is on site?
Correct. Yeah. Just the foreman picks up the materials we need, if any. Yeah. Basically, sometimes you don't need any that day. Everything's on site. Straight to the job site for everybody. They drive their personal vehicles there. We, always have room to park, basically, whether it's on the street. We typically aren't working on highways or anything like that. So, and that's huge. So if we start at 7 and work till 5, we're working. Those are billable hours, basically 7 to 5. Yeah.
So talk about billable hours. This is awful, but yesterday, not awful, but whatever. Yesterday we're doing a job, patio and retaining wall install. And I was adding it up. We're doing all our running around, like prep for the job, we're getting everything on site, and doing the excavation, so dump runs, etc. And there's 3 guys. We had, I think the total was 7 or 8 billable hours on site upon 3 guys. Yeah. 9-hour day. Right. It adds up, and the running around, how you have it, that's very intriguing to me. And have you ever had it where there's the jobs that are super tight access? I know up there that's probably uncommon. You have some space to work with, but what we struggle with is doing it in steps of all the fill has to be out at once, all the aggregate has to be delivered and installed at once, and then the block can get on site. Otherwise, we're just crammed for space. Right. We can't do it how we wish all the time.
For sure. So even still, some of our properties can be fairly large, but yes, same thing. Sometimes we'll have to do our excavation first and load it all out. But again, it comes down to kind of knowing how long those things are going to take and scheduling with our suppliers of what days we need things delivered. And don't get me wrong, it's not always perfect down to the hour. There could be areas that are wasted there. A lot of our projects, though, have so many moving parts and different aspects that, hey, we can jump on this for an hour or 2 while we're waiting on something. Right. Or there's been times where there is nothing to do building that project. Then we're cleaning the trailer, organizing the tools better, and just making that aspect, greasing the machines. Maybe that's downtime to grease your machines, clean the machines, and things like that.
So the yard setup or shop setup, what does that look like, and how do you structure like the tool staging and putting things away? Is it all just kept in an equipment trailer and you just park it, you're done the end of the day, or is there some unload aspect at the end of the job? How do you go about that?
So day to day, the trailer stays on site.
Yeah.
At the end of the job, depending on what job we're going to next, we may come back and be like, we don't need this saw. Like, let's say an IQ saw.
Yeah.
Maybe the next one's all granite materials. We don't need that IQ saw on the next job, or vice versa. We don't need a vacuum taking up space or something like that. We'll put them in our yard, in our, sea cans that are locked up.
Yeah.
Put our tools away. So yeah, we have sea cans that are dedicated to tools and equipment. And then we have ones that are for consumable materials. So we try to separate the two there as well. But yeah, we're truly not at the yard that often. It's more in between jobs.
Right.
And even then we'll have, maybe it's just Matt going to the yard with the trailer, unloading a couple quick things, and then it's off to the next one. Because again, we're not really grabbing those materials.
Yeah.
For the most part, they're coming to the next job by our suppliers. I mean, most suppliers, they'll deliver things for, a few $100. It's relatively inexpensive, and they can probably carry a lot more than you can as well, right?
And through talking about budgeting, you look at what your truck is per hour, your guys per hour, your everything, the gas, just doing one trip with your small, whatever. We have a 550 we use, but like that compared to a whole tractor trailer, however they bring it, like.
Yeah, it's not even close. We have a 650, so kind of a medium duty truck, which it works out great. We can carry a bit of weight with it, but it still doesn't even remotely compare to what a triaxle is bringing for aggregate or topsoil, or even if we have a float for our equipment, and we could go get and have gotten pallets of material, but I can only carry 19,000 pounds on that trailer. So that's only a few pallets, really, like whatever it is, depending on the ones, 5, maybe 6 pallets of stone, whereas our suppliers can bring 20, maybe more, 30, depending if they have a tractor trailer or not.
And as your guys complaining, like, I'm not familiar, we're in the city, but half load season or whatnot, that's not even applicable to you guys at this point, right? Like you're not even driving stuff around. I'm sure to an extent with floating equipment or whatnot, is it?
So yeah, half load season's like 5 tons per axle.
Yeah.
And under, you're good. So we can float all our equipment around everywhere, which works out well because our trailer has 3 axles on it plus the truck. So our equipment's no problem, but it is our suppliers bringing our aggregate. Like when I price a job, we don't price a job to bring 7 ton at a time because it would cost us so much more. And actually, with our 650, we would be over that limit as well.
Yeah.
So we have to watch our weight from March 1st to April 30th in our area. So we really try to schedule our work in the spring that there's certain jobs we can do. Because I like to get going, if possible, depending on the year, middle of March.
Right.
Is typically what we're aiming for. Sometimes that's building a deck.
Yeah.
Because really, we don't need heavy material, so we can go build a deck, a nice composite or PVC deck for somebody. Or there are towns around us that don't have half loads and more major roads that you can haul up and down. So we'll schedule, yes, exactly. So we really plan around that, and we leave our country road jobs or cottage road jobs off until May at least.
Interesting. Yeah, good. So before we wrap this up, Mark, I want what's a standard either you live by or you try to put on to your guys in your culture, and either standard or what's helped you get to this stage you're at now, being your 3rd, 4th year, for guys just starting out.
I think quality is everything. At the end of the day, you don't want to leave a bad taste in your client's mouth. Referrals are huge. If you didn't budget, or if we didn't budget enough hours, myself, and it's going to take a little bit more time to make it right, we'll note it so we can make it better next time, make it right next time. But we're going to make sure that job's right the first time. And the guys know that. They know, if this takes me an extra hour to get done, they know that that's what we're going to do. They don't need to call me on it. They know to make it right.
Right. Good. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming out here. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.